Welcome to Only Joe, where today somehow it's bonsai trees, elbow rules, and pig hearts. This is one of those episodes where a rock star is carefully shaping century-old miniature trees, MMA is arguing over which direction an elbow is allowed to travel, and modern medicine is out here trying to install pig parts in humans. Honestly, all three stories have the same energy, people pushing limits and making everybody else ask, wait, that's legal. Tommy Lee having a deep, almost Zen-level bonsai hobby is just fantastic. Not a casual little succulent on a windowsill either. We're talking century-old bonsai trees, careful trimming, artistic shaping, the whole meditative ritual. There's something very funny and kind of charming about a guy known for maximum rockstar chaos getting genuinely excited about tiny ancient trees. And apparently he has this childlike enthusiasm about it, which makes the whole thing even better fame. Excess, all that noise, and then the guy's locked in doing precision horticulture like a patient wizard. The other fun angle around Tommy Lee is the reminder that celebrity relationships can act like fame steroids. When two famous people get together, the combined attention gets weirdly supercharged. It doesn't just add up, it multiplies. Tommy Lee with Pamela Anderson was obviously a nuclear example, and Heather Locklear too. Those relationships didn't just live in tabloids, they became pop culture weather systems. It says a lot about celebrity that your dating life can upgrade your public profile almost like a career move, even when nobody involved is treating it like one. Then it gets into aging, and the late-age parenthood debate is blunt but pretty hard to ignore. Men having kids in their 80s might talk about legacy, but active parenting is the part people skip past way too fast. A toddler does not care that you had a beautiful philosophy of fatherhood. A toddler wants you mobile, awake, and able to chase them before they launch themselves into a table corner. If you're at an age where a broken hip is a real possibility, that's not a small logistical note, that's the whole story. Same thing with athletic recovery. Young fighters get banged up and bounce back like comic book mutants. Older athletes do not. That Wolverine comparison is dead on. In your 20s, your body patches things up in days. Later on, it starts sending your injuries to a committee for review. So the answer becomes training smarter, because the old fantasy of just grinding through everything stops working real fast. The 12-6 elbow rule is still one of the dumbest bits of fight regulation. The complaint is simple. Elbows are allowed, but one exact up and down angle gets treated like forbidden dark magic. It makes no real sense. And what makes it worse is fighters are supposed to remember these state-by-state rule quirks while getting punched in the face and making split-second decisions. That's ridiculous. If a move is dangerous enough to ban, be consistent. If other elbows are legal, stop pretending this one direction is uniquely cursed. One thing MMA always gets right is how fast it steals a good idea. Front kicks to the face used to feel rare, almost like a flashy bonus move. Then Anderson Silva landed that one, and suddenly the whole sport started paying attention. After that, guys like Michael Chandler and Randy Couture are using versions of it, and the technique becomes part of the shared language. That's the sport in miniature. Once something works at the highest level, everybody goes home, studies it, and tries to bolt it onto their own game. Same vibe with point fighting karate in MMA. If a wrestler can add that kind of speed, precision, and stop-start rhythm, especially against taller opponents, that gets nasty fast. That style forces weird reactions. People freeze, overreach, or misread distance, and then suddenly the traditional MMA tools open up behind it. The basketball crossover stuff is another great example of skills coming from somewhere you don't expect. Cyril Gane getting praise for footwork and change of direction because of a basketball background makes perfect sense once you picture it. Heavyweights are so often discussed like they're just giant engines, but agility is a cheat code in that division. If a huge fighter has basketball-style movement, plyometrics, and actual bounce, he starts looking unfair. That's why those Travis Brown comparisons make sense too. Big guys who move like that are always going to feel different. The executioner choke sounds exactly like something you don't want applied to your neck. From the description, it's brutal. A necktie from back mount, crushing pressure on the neck and spine, and not much in the way of a comfortable answer once it's set. What stood out is that it's not absent from the UFC because it doesn't work. It's rare because a lot of fighters just don't have that specific jiu-jitsu recognition wired deeply enough to grab it instinctively. That always fascinates me in MMA. There are still techniques sitting in plain sight, lethal if you know them, but they don't really enter the mainstream until the right specialists force everyone else to notice. Then there's the medical stuff, which is equal parts amazing and sobering. Pig heart transplants in humans are happening experimentally, but the survival numbers mentioned were around 60 days for one patient and 40 for another. That's not a victory lap yet, but it's also not science fiction anymore. And with double lung and heart transplants, the rough trade-off is clearer, about 91% one-year survival, then closer to 50% by 10 years. So the whole conversation becomes what modern medicine can buy you. Sometimes it's a lot more time, sometimes it's a narrow bridge. Either way, it's extraordinary that the bridge exists at all. That also folds back into the future of MMA speculation, which gets very spicy very quickly. The dream version is fighters competing closer to natural weights instead of turning every camp into a dehydration contest. And then the really controversial leap, if extreme weight cutting goes away, do you eventually get a more openly enhanced era with tightly regulated performance aids like peptides? It's a wild thought, but you can see the logic. If the sport says it wants pure athletic performance, starving and drying people out right before competition is a pretty dumb way to express that. Whether that becomes some kind of combat sports version of enhanced games is another question, but the fact that people are seriously floating, it tells you how broken the current weight cut culture feels. That's it for today. Only Joe remains deeply committed to covering the full spectrum from miniature trees to spinal chokes to pig heart science. Thanks for listening. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.